What's going on, everybody? It's FREEDO here for Your Overwatch. Today, we're going to be breaking down the top 5 Sombra misconceptions. We do want to make an advanced guide about her, but we're not going to rush it out before we have all the information in. I think us, as well as the entire community, is still trying to utilize Sombra in the best way. And at the end of the video, I will do some theory crafting on things that we want to try to exploit the greatest aspects of her kit. But getting right into the countdown, we have number 5. Some people seem to think that Mei can counter Sombra because her freeze is reliable and she can spam it around, probably going to catch a invis Sombra getting past. But in reality, any damage hitting Sombra and Invis will get her out of it. Invis is actually a lot weaker than you think. When Sombra's played right, ideally, she should be far behind the Mei, who wants to be looking at the front line, walling it off. And if the plan is to get Sombra to hack Mei, Mei's freeze has a shorter range than hack does. So you should actually be able to get a hack off on Mei before she can even turn around and damage you. So that would eliminate her ability to wall off your team. What's more is that Sombra is excellent against Mei in those stall-out battles where Mei is strong. Contesting points or payloads at the last objective can be a nightmare because she never dies. But landing a hack on Mei in those small scrummy fights where it's like 2v2 or 3v3 and she's stalling for time to let her respawns come in is amazing. If you hack her, she can't icicle or Mei wall at all and is pretty much a sitting duck on the point. So in reality, Sombra's very effective against Mei, but you're going to have to utilize her the correct way to do so. Moving on to number 4. Some people think that invisibility is massively overpowered. I hate to break it to you, it's not at all. Compared to Reaper, who can set up a teleport behind the enemy team already, or Tracer, with 3 blinks can get past the entire team more or less, Sombra's invisibility only gains distance, whereas Tracer's blink can be used in the middle of fights, and Reaper's Wraith form guarantees that he's invulnerable. Beyond use to initiate yourself into positioning, invisibility doesn't do much. I actually think a big skill gap between Sombra players is being able to utilize the invisibility to get yourself into the most powerful positioning to harass the enemy backline. But in truth, as soon as you're in any type of engagement, it is not hard for the enemy to get some reliable damage on you and cancel the animation of you going invisible. And even if you do get it off, there's still about a second window where they can predict where you probably went, making it very hard to slip away undetected. Invis is very useful for getting behind the enemy, but that's about it. And there already is plenty of ways for other characters to do that same thing. That's not really where she shines, actually. Number 3, hacking health packs. This is probably the biggest misconception of Sombra by far. Though yes, it is part of her kit to hack health packs. But if you spend so much of your time investing to go off into the distance outside of the main engagement of the fight to hack a health pack, while your teammates are fighting basically a man down, just to gain advantage at a health pack that most of your team might not even utilize anyway, you're effectively just setting up Sombra to be a worse Tracer. Tracer can recall and get her health back anyway. So yes, it is an effective way to set up Sombra to not die, which is pretty important. You have to think about the overall value you're giving to your team to set up that play. I'll talk a lot more about this later, but I think most of it has to do with making sure that the team comp is built around Sombra and her shenanigans. And a big problem in the community right now is that we're seeing a lot of Sombras being attempted to just fit into the standard tried and true team comps, which doesn't really build any synergies between her and the rest of her team. We'll talk more on that later in the video, but for now we'll move on to number 2, and that's her ability to cast hack on enemy players. In reality, there's very few times where spending your time to hack a character is more valuable than just shooting it. First of all the characters that have solid primary fires that don't get disabled with hack, or passives that help them out in the fight, are bad targets. Yeah, you can hack Pharah so she can't fly away, but she can still hover and hit you with rockets. McCree won't be able to stun, but you're not the fastest target in the world. He'd probably just turn around and headshot you. The hack is best when you're already on the front foot in the engagement. The silence effect can guarantee that you will snowball onto the point, but it doesn't open up the fight. If it is determined that Sombra is too weak, which I don't think is the case actually, I think this is where she might need a buff. If she guaranteed a hack through taking damage, or if she could target maybe up to 2 or 3 targets at once when hacking in sort of like a Winston Cleave attack, reminiscent of that concept art that we saw of her leaked before she came out where she was hacking all the Omnics, then I think it would be better. But first I think we need to see the power of a team comp built around her. Last on the countdown is number 1, playing Sombra as a DPS. Sombra's damage is some of the weakest in the game. Dealing reliable chip damage into targets pretty much just feeds support ultimates. Although we did say before that you can't concentrate purely on hacking because it doesn't have that much value, you also can't concentrate purely on dealing DPS either, because if you do, you have to ask yourself, could I be playing the same exact position as Tracer? And if the answer is yes, 100% of the time you should be on Tracer because she simply does more damage and will help you win fights. But if you can get away with it and you are able to win fights with Sombra, then it will give you a chance to shine with her strongest attribute, which is her ultimate, EMP, which is in my opinion the best ultimate in the game right now. But you have to be careful not to be losing too many normal fights just to bank on the fact that she has an EMP. An important thing to note that is on the PTR, ultimate charge rates were nerfed by a lot, so there's a lot more mid fight and much less ultimate fight in the game, which allows for the stable DPS roles to shine a bit more, making it more important to get production out of those roles. The problem is, even if you play her perfectly, the damage output you'll get out of her is simply worse than every other DPS role. Sombra's a bit tricky to define. She's kind of analogous to Mei. Mei doesn't really fit into any of the other known roles. She's more tanky than some tanks, her DPS is average, but her biggest strength is crowd control. So I would define her as that. CC. Sombra is similar in this way, where I don't think you should define her as a DPS. You should think of her as a disabler, a flanker who provides disruption. Now, with that being the case, I think a lot of my earlier opinions about Sombra have come to light, and I really want to see the meta develop around comps that utilize her properly. And this is the type of team comp that I think has to be picked in order to get proper value out of Sombra. I think you need a very mobile comp that can afford to play separately and split the map. Everything we've learned about Overwatch team comps tells us to play together, play in a ball, whether you're dive comping together in a massive group speeding in and diving key targets, or if you're in a death ball poke comp behind a Rhine shield. Either way, both styles demand that you play in conjunction, and the closer to your teammates the better. Well, I think utilizing Sombra necessitates a new style of comp to emerge. A style of comp that before kind of got laughed at by people who know how to make good comps, but now this would be good. I'm gonna call it the squad comp. A team composition that's built to be able to play in smaller groups, if not even purely individualistically, in order to get value. What do I mean by that? I think she'd work best with triple DPS, but most specifically using characters that can split off on their own and span big distance on the map. You could have a pharmacy flanking off one side. You can have Widow take another angle far off into the distance, making the enemy team scared to poke their head out in many different locations. And then you have Sombra way off into the back line, and throughout taking multiple angles at all times, it can put the enemy team either into chaos, which Sombra wants to be playing in, or to ball up and play in weaker positions than they would normally want to. Defensively speaking, when you have a really strong flanker aggressing onto you, you can just throw Winston at it. Oh, they have attacking Genji? Defensive Winston, you're gonna hound him the entire game. Well, if you also have a Widow playing for picks off on her own somewhere, and a pharmacy flanking you on one angle, crowd controlling you with concussion blast and getting good poke, and you have to worry about Sombra sneaking in and hacking a key target or cleaning up a frag herself, where can Winston go? Now, this style of comp requires that a map can facilitate it. Taking the last point on Eichenwald might be kind of hard with this, because you have to funnel into close range engagements anyway, but the bigger the map is, the more angles you have to exploit, the more powerful it becomes, because it'll be harder for the enemy team to account for all the different spots you can be. Also, by the way, and this is important, the more mobile your team is, the more often they'll be able to utilize the health packs that you're hacking across the map. And hacking health packs in order to heal is not the strongest point, actually. In fact, the strongest part about hacking a health pack is when a small skirmish happens on the side of the map and it ends up being a 1v1, and the enemy wants to run to that health pack and feels secure in knowing that they can get health there. But in fact, your teammate can use it, not them. But this requires that the teams be split up for that situation to happen. In reality, no amount of health packs is better than the powerful healing we have from other hero characters. The power of hacking health packs is to further sustain the map control you're already trying to impose on the enemy. Now, my little theory craft here definitely has counters, but I think you always can swap in whatever DPS you feel you need. But I think it's important to note that my ideas about squad comp completely changes the concept of how Overwatch normally is played in a team fight. The goal is not to dive in on the enemy death ball. The goal is to set up on powerful positions around them to the point where they eventually collapse under the pressure. You should be pressuring and poking from different angles and boxing them in, making it difficult for them to deal with the various threats that surround them. I think in this situation, it almost set up Widowmaker to be a star, because any resources they spend to try to counter-harass the Widow will open up opportunities for the other DPS in the back line, and that's the point of this comp. And remember, if Sombra gets a hack on a tank and they have no shielding from a distance, there's nowhere to hide from Widow's scope. This is really interesting stuff, and I'd love to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Sombras are getting a very interesting response, and I think we're onto something on this channel. If you liked the video, please hit the like button. It really does help us out. Subscribe for more. We upload each and every day, so be sure to hit the bell icon so you don't miss an upload. Also, we Twitch stream each and every day, and we're going to be testing out some Sombra comp in the competitive mode, seeing if this squad comp theory works out. So come on over and check it out. Check out our Discord server to find teammates to team up with yourself and to interact with the Your Overwatch community. Follow us on Twitter for stream announcements, updates, and other doodads at Your Overwatch YT. That's been it for me. I've been FREEDO for Your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.